This is a 980 CKNW podcast.
Welcome to the Sunday Night Health Show. Maureen McGrath hosting this program for you. Can you believe it's April 14th? It's snowing in Chicago. My brother sent me a picture. Okay, so thanks so much for being here with me this evening, listening. If you have any questions at all, the number to call is 1-877-399-9898. That's 1-877-399-9898. Don't be shy. I can't be talking to myself all night, and I'm not, thank goodness. I have a guest in the studio right now. But if you want to email me, nursetalk@hotmail.com as well. So I'm honored to have this guest in the studio with me. 1 in 7 Canadian men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. Prostate cancer is the most commonly diagnosed cancer amongst Canadian men, 21% of all new male cases. In 2017, 21,300 Canadian men were diagnosed with prostate cancer, and 4,100 died from the disease. Joining me in the studio is a gentleman who knows a little bit too much about this medical condition. Gogs Gagnon is the author of the book, Prostate Cancer Strikes, Navigating the Storm. Thank you so much for joining me in the studio.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. So what inspired you to write this book?
I have to tell you, when I was first diagnosed, I had really no plans to share or talk about it. It was quite devastating to hear the news, and I really didn't want to discuss it with anybody. I didn't even want to talk to my wife about it. But I realized that once I finally started to open up and share, that it was therapeutic and it was helpful. And not only helpful for me, but helpful for other people. So I decided right then that it was important that I share my entire journey and to not leave out any details.
And that's evident in your book. Thank you very much. I think when we share stories, we release some of our pain, and we also, you never know who you're helping by sharing that, because I see a lot of men in my clinical practice who have had prostate cancer because they end up with some of the issues like erectile dysfunction and urinary incontinence, leakage of urine, and they are devastated by those two things because initially they are focused on the cancer part and they are devastated at that, and then they get through that, and then there are some lasting or residual effects.
You're absolutely correct. And when you're first diagnosed, it's very important for men or anyone who's diagnosed with a major disease. It's very important to realize that at the beginning, you're going to most likely be in a state of shock. And you're going to need some time just to recover from that initial diagnosis. And during this period, it's not a good idea to make any decisions. And you may feel an urgent or sudden urge to make a decision, but it's the worst time to make that decision.
Like what type of decision do you mean?
Well, as far as what to do about it, for one thing, you won't have enough information. You really need to understand what your test results are. You need to question your test results. Maybe they need to be redone. Maybe there's additional testing that's required. Or maybe you need to seek multiple opinions and speak with other doctors and other cancer survivors. And you really need to understand what you're dealing with before you make any decisions. And I know a lot of guys that I've talked with, as soon as they hear that word cancer, they immediately want to deal with it without even really understanding what kind of, what their situation is.
Right, because one of the treatment options today is watchful waiting.
Absolutely. Now, one thing I want to make clear is I'm not advocating one treatment option over another, as there's no one single treatment that's best for everyone. And just because one treatment option may work for one man, it may not work for another. And it's very important to treat each case as individual, on its individual factors. You need to understand your test results, your age, your life expectancy, and you need to research all your options and speak with multiple doctors.
Now, you are fully recovered from prostate cancer. And so what exactly does that mean? Do you have any of the longer lasting effects of this condition?
I wouldn't say that I'm fully recovered. There's really the physical side and also the emotional side.
Yeah.
Now, emotionally, I'm actually doing not too bad, but I still get quite anxious when it's time for a follow-up PSA test. There's always the fear of recurrence. I'm starting to learn to live with that. As far as the physical side, I think I'm probably one of the lucky ones where urinary control returned after 6 weeks. And actually my flow is a lot better now than it ever was, so I have no complaints there.
Oh, that's nice.
Not quite the like my teens, but
because many men suffer with leakage of urine or urinary incontinence, and what they don't realize is that there are a number of treatments for that condition. You know, good bladder health, reduction of bladder irritants. There are clamps that men can use on their penis, you know, to stop from dripping if they're going outside, you know, for the day, for example.
Right. Well, one of the important things to realize is that depending on what kind of urinary control you had before treatment, if it wasn't so good going in, well, it's probably not going to be any better coming out.
But a lot of men don't. I mean, about 16.6% of men have overactive bladder, which is frequency, urgency, and nocturia, prior to a diagnosis, just in general. But a lot of men get stress urinary incontinence after they've had their prostate treatment, and that can be very devastating because it makes people feel older. They feel, you know, they might choose to wear diapers when there are better options, like a penile clamp, for example, which would be better, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It would be best to speak to a healthcare professional regarding your specific
That's exactly
situation.
what I do, Gogs. I don't think you know that.
Yeah,
I'm a nurse continence advisor. So, and I treat men with these issues. So there's a lot of treatment options for men.
But I think I've been very lucky because depending on what kind of urinary control you had before, which was very good for me, and also depending on how far cancer had invaded, and also depending on what kind of treatment you had and how successful that treatment was, and a lot of those factors play into the picture. So not every case is going to be the same. Not everyone is going to experience the same results. No.
But another thing that men experience quite commonly is erectile dysfunction.
Yes, and that's been a lot more of a challenge. Now, for me, I was lucky. I chose surgery was my option.
So you had a radical prostatectomy?
I had an open radical, which is the old-fashioned remove the prostate with human hands. I was very fortunate because the nerves were able to be spared. It's something that you don't have a choice on. It depends on what the surgeon sees when he opens you up. If there's any suspicion that the nerves are invaded with cancer, then they're going to come out. Mine were spared, but even though they're spared, it doesn't mean they'll work.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean that even if they do work, they may not work as well as they did before. Now, for me, erections did start to return after 3 months, but the quality was pretty poor. It took a good 17 months, and they are now actually at a quality where I can have relationships. But that being said, I require the help of Viagra, and I also have to spend a lot more time and energy on romance. Before,
that's a good benefit.
Well, it actually is, because before, really, all I needed to do was just put a thought in my head, and that was good enough to get going. But now I actually have to put some mental thought into it, and I needed to connect much more at a deeper level with my spouse. After 36 years of marriage, I think our relationship was getting a bit mechanical. But now, because I need to really focus more on romance, we're at a deeper connection now. So it's been good.
That's a great side benefit. And I'm glad you're getting help with Viagra, which is a PDE5 inhibitor. There's Cialis, Levitra, Staxin. There's a number of them, but there are a number of treatment options as well. Diet and exercise can help a lot of men to increase blood flow, cutting out the sugar. And there's the latest technology is electromagnotherapy, which helps not only with leakage of urine, but it also helps with erections for men. Anyway, we just have about 30 seconds left. Where your book is receiving a lot of attention overseas, and where can folks find information about your book?
Well, I do have a website, gogsgagnon.com, and on there you'll find information about the book, and also it's going to be available online and in stores very soon. And if you're in your local bookstore, you can ask for it, and they'll be happy to order it for you.
Fantastic. I'm sure the libraries will be ordering it too, because it is quite a Bible, especially if you are facing prostate cancer. I really appreciate your sharing this story, and you're just a couple of years out now from this. So
yes, May will be my 2-year anniversary, and my wife and I are going on a cruise.
Oh, that's so fantastic. Well, I'm glad things have worked out well for you. Thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm sure the listeners appreciate that. That's Prostate Cancer Strikes, Navigating the Storm. Welcome back to the Sunday Night Health Show. Maureen McGrath hosting this program for you. If you're just tuning in now and you missed my little segment on prostate cancer, and my author Gogs Gagnon talk about his book called Prostate Cancer Strikes, Navigating the Storm. I do have a copy of that book if you want to give us a call. The number to call is 1-877-399-9898. That's the third caller. Lines are open. And it's a great book. It has tremendous amount of information for you. And so just give us a call, 1-877-399-9898, and the book will be yours. Right now, we're going to get to relationships. And many, many people struggle in their relationships. And that is why I asked clarity coach Rocky Lee to join me in the studio. He discusses marriage and relationships and sexless marriages and everything. Anyway, we're going to be talking about that tonight. So, Rocky, thanks so much for joining me in the studio.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, you have a practice in, is it Richmond, British Columbia?
That's
okay.
correct.
And so tell me, how did you get into this area? There's a lot of coaches out there.
There are.
But there's not too many that are relationship coaches or clarity coaches, which is what I really like. And you've won an award recently as well.
Yeah, just for being one of the top marriage counselors in Richmond.
Wow, that's fantastic. Do they need marriage counseling in Richmond? I'm just kidding. Is there a great need?
Clearly we do.
I've never heard of that in some of the other towns, certainly not my town, which shall be nameless. But so congratulations on that award, the top marriage therapist. And so if you're having troubles out there in Richmond, British Columbia, Rocky's your man. Okay, so so how did you get into this area of coaching? And
Yeah, that's a great question. So the majority of coaches out there that tackle relationships are typically life coaches or date coaches.
Right.
And where I'm really kind of passionate about is helping single people who really just want to get married. They don't want to date.
Why? I'm just kidding.
But
Why
they
do
really,
they want to get married?
really want the love story. They really want,
They want the romance.
They want the romance. They want the fantasy.
Right.
And they really want to get married.
Yes.
And so that really set me apart, is that I only work with single people who actually want to get married. And with couples, I've always felt that couples really, they're about maybe one or two conversations away from saving their marriage when I see them.
It's the end of the road.
It's very seldom that I have a marriage come in where it's not savable. Mm-hmm. And really, it's just that one or two conversations that are needed to get them right over the hump.
And is it largely communication that the issue?
Oh, yeah.
Is?
Yeah, it's always communication.
And so that's why that clarity piece, because oftentimes people are confused, they are hurt, they are bewildered, they are angry. They come in with lots of different emotions, I would imagine.
Oh, tons of emotions.
Let's start with those that, and if you're listening out there and if you have a question for Rocky Lee, the clarity coach, and you are dreaming about getting married, or you have a fantasy about this amazing aspect of life, the number to call is 1-877-399-9898. So do single people come to you and say, Rocky, I want to get married. I want to meet the woman or the man of my dreams. Can you help me?
I do. And, so, really, when I have a single person versus a divorce, same question. They really want to get married.
Okay, whether they're divorced or single.
Yeah.
So how many times does it take somebody to realize, okay, this marriage thing is not for me. I've done it 3 times and I'm broke. Or is it still that fantasy? They still have that big dream.
And so how I look at it is that we're all wired to have really deep, meaningful, intimate relationships with someone or with many people. And so the fantasy is real. The desire to be loved and to give love is real. But really where they get stuck is they're finding the right, am I finding the right partner?
Right.
And most of them are finding the wrong partner.
Oh, is that the ones who are looking and they're like, what do you think? Are they bringing them in? What do you think of this guy? What do you think of her? And you're saying, no, not for you.
Yeah, so most of them will come in and they're mostly not dating already, but they've just gone through a lot of hardship with the dating process. So when they come in, what they know about my services already is that I'll take the time to actually profile who the right fit is.
Okay.
And so we profile that based off their needs, based on the goal of marriage, not their wants.
Right. How about the intimacy piece? Because I find anyway, in my clinical practice, a lot of people married the wrong person. So they were never sexually attracted to the person from the beginning. They just wanted the marriage. They were 35. The biological clock was ticking. He was good enough. All the friends were getting married. And so how do you incorporate that intimacy piece, that it's not just about the marriage? Because somebody put marriage and sex in the same bed together.
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why, but anyway, a long time ago.
Yeah.
So how do you incorporate that? Is that something that you talk about?
Absolutely.
To your clients?
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of that is about redefining what love is. And so the majority of the times when we define love or we talk about love, it's really about the emotion, that butterfly feeling that we get when we see someone, we're attracted to them, there's chemistry and there's sparks flying everywhere. And for me, I help people redefine that that's actually not love. That is chemistry, that is sexual tension or sexual attraction, but that's not really what love is about. And so once that's redefined, then it helps.
And are you promoting the love more so than the attraction?
Yeah, because what happens is attraction will never define for single people whether that person they're dating is indeed the right fit for them. That just tells them that they're attracted, but that actually never gives them enough data of whether this person would be the right fit for them in marriage.
And so what kind of data do they need to find out whether that person would be the right person for them in marriage?
Yeah, great question. That comes down to their needs, their core needs.
And so what are you finding are some of the most common core needs?
Yeah, so how I actually frame it is I talk to them about the concept of 1/3 of your life versus your 2/3 of your life. So many times we look for a partner based on our 1/3 of our life, which is all the excitement. I want the fancy dates. I want to go hang out, dress up. Mm-hmm. That's kind of what I would describe as the 1/3. And sometimes our hobbies and our passions where we have a little bit of commonality, that's all 1/3. 2/3 is kind of when we have to think about who's going to cook dinner, who's going to take out the garbage, when are we going to do laundry, and what are we going to do when we're completely bored of spending money and going out and partying and hanging out. Now what do we do when we're completely in the routine of work and life and stress and all the other things, the family stuff that comes into play? That's the 2/3 of life.
Isn't that Netflix? Isn't that what Netflix was created for?
That's the distraction of the 2/3 of life.
Right. Okay. I need therapy, obviously. So then what are you going to do? What are they going to do for those 2/3?
Yeah. So what they have to figure out is, typically in my 2/3 of life, what do I really spend time with? If I have a free night or free day, what do I really want to do? And typically what you really want to do at home, that's truly who you are. You're never going to change from that. But passions and hobbies and things that we love to do that are really exciting, that's going to change over time. We're never guaranteed that that's going to be consistent.
Right. And how about that growth and development? You sometimes see one partner in the relationship has grown, has learned from their mistakes, experiences, has developed, changes a bit. And then the other partner maybe stays stagnant for whatever reason, just remains more childlike, if you will, less developmentally advanced,
That's
if
right.
you will. I'm not saying it's the guys. But how can somebody ensure that the two people grow together? Because that's really, that would be a part of love. And love changes too. There's committed love and there's romantic love and there's fantasy love and it changes through and through.
That's
and
right.
there's, you've thrown your pajamas on the bathroom floor again, love, and you've not put the toilet seat down and all of those issues, kind of love as well.
That's right.
An acceptance type of love.
That's right.
And so how do you prepare people for that? Because it can all be so wonderful in the beginning.
Yeah. Yeah. So what I'm discovering is that if couples really begin to look at a year-to-year goal and process where each year they learn how to lean into vulnerability, that's where the growth happens with the couples. And so where we get stuck is when each year passes and as a guy, I choose not to get vulnerable, or I stay at the same level of vulnerability that I was last year.
Okay.
So then the following year, it's just not going to be enough because my partner is going to change, just like you were saying.
So, but a lot of people are not going to understand what with all due respect to anyone listening, the 9-year-olds and up, what do you mean by vulnerability? So what does it would be harder for a man, I would imagine, because a lot of women watch Brene Brown and she's all about vulnerability. And so they've been educated on that. But it would be hard for people to be vulnerable. What do you mean by being vulnerable?
Yeah. So for me, vulnerable is, are you able to come authentically and express who you are with literally no fear of any form of repercussion, whether that would be shame or rejection or whatever that fear would be. And so what I'm finding is that if men and women, if they come to a place of vulnerability where they're each year, they're leaning into expressing, these are my needs, honey.
But a lot of women might say, my needs are shoes and great dinners and fancy cars and a second home and, white picket fence, whatever. They may have materialistic needs.
That's right.
Which is not necessarily authentic or being vulnerable.
That's right.
And so how would you recommend, and being vulnerable too, I think people might misinterpret it by saying, I am, I like this. I want to, horseback ride. I want to mountain bike. I want to do this. Is who I am. You know, that's not who they are. Right?
Yes.
Right.
So I look at that where there's actually 6 core human needs that I typically teach. And so, for example, if they want to go horseback riding, that could fall under the category of what we would call variety. Where a person actually needs variety on a constant basis, versus some people may not want variety as much. They may need significance. Some people may need certainty. The idea is actually identifying and then expressing what your need is through an experience, not by your emotions. And so where we get stuck in communicating with our partners, that we're so caught up in trying to express the emotion, and then we get upset when our partner doesn't understand what that's about. Instead of actually saying, well, this is what I need, this is how I would like to experience it, and here's 3 simple, practical things that you could do for me that allows me to experience it.
Okay. And, I just have a million questions running around in my head based on 15 years of clinical practice. It's difficult for many people to express their true emotion or actually to ever look at themselves. Like I get a lot of patients in my practice, and we're going to go to break. I'll have you answer this afterward, who they come in and they have the blame game. They're just like the first 15 minutes, she does this, she doesn't do this, he does this, he didn't do that, he doesn't do this, he always does that, he never does that black and white thinking and that blame thing. So very hard for them to turn the proverbial mirror on themselves. So I'm going to talk to you about that. And then when married couples, after you've fixed them up and gotten them married, they walk down the aisle, and then what? The troubles that they might face. So welcome back to the Sunday Night Health Show. Maureen McGrath hosting this program for you. I am in studio with Rocky Lee of the Clarity Coach Center from Richmond, British Columbia. He specializes in marriage counseling, couples therapy, and relationship coaching for couples, singles, and the divorced. And he talks about, he does divorce coaching as well, along with marriage counseling and helping people to get married. So thanks so much for staying here in the studio with me. So we talked a little bit about the vulnerability piece and how difficult that is for people in particular when they play the blame game. And so as opposed to, because it's so hard to look at ourselves and say, I failed. I'm not as good as, people are going to think I'm a loser or whatever. And it's just so much easier to say, if he just did this or she just did that, my life would be great. But can people benefit from looking at themselves in that authenticity and, being genuine and honest and especially in a loving relationship to be able to share that with your partner? There's no greater gift.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, especially if they love you.
That's the only way for the marriages to heal. It really is. I look at it from this perspective that pretty much all conflict starts off with 2 questions. It's really someone's asking, can I make you happy? Or the other person is saying, can you do these things for me to make me happy? Right. And that's really what it comes down to. And so when we talk about the blame game, that's where we're situated. And we're stuck on the aspect that my partner has to somehow make me happy, or I have to somehow make my partner happy. And the problem is that
you can never make someone else happy.
Happy is so subjective. And I could never do enough to make someone happy. On the other hand, if someone was able to express to me what they really needed in that moment and how they want to experience it, then I could actually help them experience that need in a much greater way. So I can help somebody experience love in a greater way. I can help somebody experience joy in a greater way. So that's capable. We're capable of doing that, but happiness is where we get stuck.
Exactly. And so how about people who are highly sensitive in relationships and they get their feelings hurt all the time, or they misinterpret what is going on, and then that just has the potential to set off a firestorm of negative events?
Yeah, so it's unfortunate, and that does happen. And I think to many degrees, we are all like that. It's just that some people are more stuck on that process. And so when I see clients come in and they're really sensitive and they're really stuck on, my partner has said this to me and man, it really hurt. Then what we're talking about here is they're stuck in their thought. They're stuck in a memory. And it's kind of what I call time travel. And, we've all kind of been in a conversation where we're talking with somebody and you recognize, hey, they're not in the room in this conversation with me anymore. They've actually time traveled somewhere. And that's kind of really what that whole sensitivity, I'm offended process is that someone has said something and it's triggered something in us. And then we've jumped in our mind to memory. And we're stuck there. Trying to figure that part out. And that's where it hurts. And so when people are able to actually be self-aware and present that they're actually doing that, there are ways that you can actually interrupt that thought process where you're no longer sensitive anymore, but you're actually more aware of what your need is.
And that somebody else may not have intentionally tried to hurt you.
That's right.
People, we are not mind readers here.
That's right.
So divorce coaching, one of the biggest issues I see in my practice is the trouble with divorces, especially the effect it has on children.
Yeah.
And so when parents have resentments with their exes and they use their children as pawns,
that's right,
or they spoil their children, and they are negative toward the other parent in front of the child, or they blame the other parent.
Yeah.
And so how damaging is that? I feel like parents need to know that it might be okay when they're 10 and they're not showing any signs, but it's not going to be okay when they're 16 and 25 and 40.
Yeah. It's super damaging, and actually for two reasons. Many times we think of it as just it's damaging the kids alone, and it's really a little bit more than that. What I see is that when couples are actually so resentful and bitter towards each other, and they're expressing it with such, like openness in front of their kids, they're doing two things. Number one, they're actually dishonoring the other parent in front of them. That's causing the child now to see their parent in a completely tainted way. The other one is that it's actually causing them to pick up kind of what I would say is they're modeling bad relationship behavior. And now that seems acceptable. And now further on down the line, if that child grows up and wants a married relationship or a healthy one, it's going to be really difficult. They're going to have to weed out some of that stuff because that's actually now a part of the whole process of how they react to a partner.
Exactly. That's a great point that you make, and I really appreciate it. I wish we had more time. Rocky Lee, he is a clarity coach, marriage counselor, couples therapy, and coach. I'll definitely have you back. He's out there in Richmond, British Columbia on the West Coast. And your website, claritycoach.ca?
That's correct.
That's wonderful. So if you have any questions at all, the number to call is 1-877-399-9898. You can email me, nursetalk@hotmail.com. You can always go to Rocky Lee's site, claritycoach.ca, if you're having troubles in your relationship. Many people do. I am Maureen McGrath, and you are listening to the Sunday Night Health Show on the Chorus Radio Network. Thank you so much, Rocky, for
Thank you, Maureen,
being in the studio. I appreciate it.
You got questions? She's got answers. The nurse is in for Nurse Talk.
Welcome back to the Sunday Night Health Show, the second hour of the program. Lots to talk about on this second hour, from mindfulness to some of the best places to have sex. But right now, my guest is on the line, and she is Cavell Ardiel, and she's going to tell us about transformational therapy, which is a pioneering new therapy method that is gathering interest, and it's different to therapy techniques like cognitive behavioral therapy and talk therapy. It achieves outstanding results, apparently, very quickly. Hello, Cavell.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great.
So thank you so much for being on the program. So if you could tell the listeners what rapid transformational therapy is.
It is hypnosis with a twist, basically a hybrid. And it was created by a psychotherapist named Marie McGrath out of the UK. And what she has done is she's incorporated cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, neurolinguistic programming techniques, and psychotherapy. And so it actually, how it works is it's much quicker than talk therapy. It gets to the root cause of the issue.
And how is it done, actually? So you're a practitioner. You've just started out in this practice. And how do you treat your patients? And what are some of the concerns that they come to you with?
Well, there's an intake form. So we just have about a 20-minute conversation about what their issues are. And it can range anything from, some physical ailments to maybe some trauma, even weight management. Most people recognize smoking, becoming a non-smoker with hypnosis. It can be night terrors. I mean, it's a wide range of things that people come for. For me personally, I do work with people in regards to sleep issues, with weight, and sexual dysfunction. Those are the areas that I choose. And so we have the intake form, and then we spend about an hour, maybe a little bit longer, depending on what is going on in the session, actually taking the person into hypnosis, finding the root cause, helping them to understand it and to change the beliefs. And then we have what we call the cure, basically, is just a form of talk that helps them solidify what they need to in order to have the best outcome.
Is there any homework? Now, hypnotherapy is involved, so you're basically for lack of a better term, putting people under. Is that correct?
It's in a body awake state. So some people use the word trance, and that can kind of give people maybe a creepy feeling. So how I actually explain it to people is, if you've ever woken up in the morning where you're kind of half asleep and half awake, and so you can kind of hear what's going on, but you're cozy and you don't really want to get out of bed, that's basically what it feels like. And when I'm actually working with them, we'll talk about scenes. We'll go to scenes, and sometimes people will say, "Well, I can't see anything," and that's okay. You don't actually have to see anything. Sometimes you just get flashes of a memory, but it's more about the feeling. So people have expectations of performance, and you don't have to. It's just about being suggestible, about being open, and that gives you the best outcome.
And about how long does it take to get somebody in this body awake state?
Oh, within seconds. Yeah,
within seconds.
30 seconds, yes.
And is
correct. And then you deepen them. You use techniques like snapping of the fingers to take them deeper and deeper.
And is it in that deep state that they are then vulnerable and can become open? Is that the first part of this?
They become suggestible.
And
what suggestible means is that they're allowing themselves to be open to, yes, I guess you could use the word vulnerable. I guide them. I'm not controlling them. I'm actually just guiding them back to memories. So basically what you can look at is that it's a filing cabinet or a computer, and we're going back into the files of experiences from your childhood or maybe from a traumatic event from 5 years ago. We go back and we review it. You're not reliving it. And then we're going to have a conversation about it. And basically, you're working through your own issues.
And so when a client is reviewing this with you, they're talking about it as though they are looking in on the situation, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's like watching a movie. Watching a movie, exactly.
And then they have a better understanding?
Yes, because it could be something. So we have three parts of our brain. We have the what we call the lizard part of our brain, and that's the fight or flight. And then you have your subconscious. That's where your belief systems are, your emotions are. And then you have the prefrontal cortex, which is your logical thinking. So when we're awake and we're out living in the world, those two things fight with each other. And so what happens is when we take someone into hypnosis is we're actually bypassing that prefrontal cortex and going into the subconscious where the emotions and the beliefs are. They come from experiences that we've had, especially in childhood. Up to the age of 7, we're like sponges, and we use imagination. So we take in literally everything that happens to us, and because we don't have enough life experience, what we see, for example, let's say you're 5 years old and the teacher asks you a question in kindergarten and you don't have an answer and you get embarrassed. Well, that can imprint a very negative memory. And so what we can do is we can actually go back to that memory and just change it, because knowledge is power. And when you know better, you do better.
And so that situation, something that was triggered as a 5-year-old, can affect you as a 35-year-old?
Absolutely. And you might not even know it was that memory, but you just know that that a woman with long dark hair and wore heavy rimmed glasses somehow makes you not like them, makes you feel uncomfortable about them. And you're like, why? What's happening here? But it could be going back to that memory of that one time with that teacher.
And how about patterns of behavior or patterns of thinking? Is rapid transformational therapy or RTT beneficial in those cases?
Exactly. Yes. Because we get to the root cause of why you keep doing something. So when I say that we've imprinted a lot of beliefs up to the age of 7, you actually will reinforce it up to the age of 35. Now, that doesn't mean you can't change after the age of 35. I just want to make that very clear. But based on your experiences, you do the same things over and over and over, and you can't understand why you do it. For example, dating the same kind of people, that can go back to an imprinting that you had as a child. And we can go back to the core, to the root of that issue.
Now, if people have something that triggers them and they get very angry, is this something, and then they are said to have an anger problem, because a lot of people have anger issues. We have fabulous anger management groups. Is this something that RTT can help?
Yes. Again, going back to the root cause, why do you get angry? A lot of times it's anger is fear. And so we have to figure out, what is it, a lack of control or trying to be controlled? We have all of the answers inside of us. That's the beauty of hypnosis, is we can go back to memories.
And we change that memory, or do we, is that effectively what RTT is doing?
So what happens is you go back to the memory, and we will do dialoguing with the parent. Maybe it was a parent that created the situation where you didn't feel validated, you felt put down. They have conversations with the guardian parent, or maybe a sibling or teacher. You have them have a conversation back and forth. And it makes people feel empowered. It helps clear attachments that you have to beliefs. And the brain is fascinating. You can rewire it. You can create new neurons. And that's proven through science. And that's what we do. And so you're given a 21-day recording to listen to help reinforce and create the new neurons, the new belief systems.
You're going to give that to me, right, about my little issue?
Yes.
But you did tell me that you asked me, or you reached out to me and said if I could send my most challenging patients that have erectile dysfunction. So those who have tried all of the available options, diet and exercise and medications and electromagnotherapy, vacuum pumps, intracavernosal injections, urethral pellets, of the many choices that are out there. And they've tried them and they're not working for them, or they're not a candidate. If they've had a pacemaker, they wouldn't be a candidate for electromagnotherapy. So what can RTT, or rapid transformational therapy, do for men with erectile dysfunction?
I hate to sound like a broken record. We can go back to the root cause of why it's happening. And we also have what's called the healing vortex or command cell therapy. So what that is that's actually using the imagination to help heal the body. And when I say heal, I have to be careful with the word heal. But basically, we're creating your mind to work with your body and your cells to make it feel better. And that may sound a little crazy to people, but if you've done, have you ever done guided meditation yourself?
No.
No.
I need to.
Yes, they're fabulous.
I went to a flow yoga course on Saturday. That was great.
Excellent. Yeah, and it got you into a zone, did it not?
Yes, it did.
Yes. So again, that's the power of the mind, is taking out all of the things that are after us every single day, the traffic, the thoughts, the running thoughts in our head, and we just focus. So with the erectile dysfunction, again, going back to a scene, maybe there's some anxiety, maybe there is an embarrassing moment that they had, but the healing vortex, just to go back to that, it's creating this image to embrace the entire body, to create warmth and healing. I know this probably for some people is just going to sound crazy, but it really, I wasn't into anything that I thought was considered woohoo, and this is not. They're finding now with science that we can really work with our body and our mind to make ourselves feel better.
Absolutely. There's a huge interconnectedness to that. And you are going to help me. I've gained a little bit of weight in the last few months because I think I know why. It was because I was traveling and doing talks and eating in hotels and restaurants. And so I'd like to take that off. And it's been hard for me, but you're going to help me. And I'm going to listen to the 21-day program. And I'm also going to have this hypnotherapy, and then we'll see how I do. And I would love to have you back after that, and I'm happy to talk about my experience. And I'm also going to send some of my most challenging ED patients over to you as well. And so thank you so much for being on the program. How can people get in touch with you?
You can just go to my website. It's there's a contact form there. It's cavellardiel.com. And it's CAVELLEARDIEL.com. And just send the information and I'll give them a call.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cavell, for joining me on the program tonight.
And thank you.
You're very welcome. I appreciate it. And I look forward to working with you.
You've been listening to a 980 CKNW podcast. Listen live at cknw.com, the Radio Player Canada app, tune in, Amazon Alexa, HD Radio at 101.1 FM HD2, and on the AM dial, 980 CKNW.